Hello everyone. I would like to begin today talking about the sensitivity of the human experience to be aware of itself. And we see that there are many different types of human beings and many different types of understanding, and as different things blend, we find the new mixing with the old and the old mixing with the new. And we see that our mind is one of many times and spaces of consideration. What that means is you might not physically be present in your past as you believe, but the experience of your past is present with the experience that you're presently going through. What that means is that all moments are connected, even though you do have experiences of separate glances and a static universe. You see, when one person sees the head, someone sees the tail. And how could these two different beings be part of the same universe? Well, if their backs were always to one another in the sense that they were always the same thing. So you see that the only way your duality makes sense if only there is a presence that can be aware of a duality. So you are aware of every single dualistic relationship and separative thing, I guess, that's happened to you from a unified space. So you're never separate. And that is what becomes the manifestation of existential love in your being, guys. Because back in the day, people had such conscious awareness and ability with their body and mind and the awareness of consciousness that when you went beside an enlightened person, you felt a presence that was not just immediately understood by you. You would feel many complex approaches being simply done. You will see a lot of simple things giving simple practices, giving complex rewards. And we see that the level of excitement in your life is actually how well you're living. And excitement must be based on your greatest ability to engage with your immediate story, to break it in a sense. And I say break in the sense that once you do that, you also evolve it as well. There is the cosmic ability to destroy and to construct and to be aware of such passage. Now, when consciousness begins speaking about itself, it can never be accurate until it stops speaking. So your sense of accuracy is delayed as long as there is a dualistic relationship being the most immediate pedestal of attention. Your attention, see guys, it's not that the problem and solution were never there. You're creating the problem out of your analysis of your structured view. And so the answer is always there because the problem was based on nothing. So the answer is also based in nothing. Because all separation points to an answer that is more integrated. Unless the separation constantly breaks itself, well, it can only do that to be aware. So the same particle is present everywhere only because there is a viewer who sees a particle to be present. And so, what if that view is the presence of many other forms of presence before in this timeless and spaceless existence? And you see, that's the dangerous part, because man cannot confront himself without a history. Only few men have understood what that really means. What that means is, we are dependent on structure because we are trying to live orderly lives. But orderly lives limit us from the growth that we get from a chaotic expression of nature, and it is not a physical chaos. It is not vandalism, anarchy. It is mental freedom to be any idea present within any space-time continuum or any space of awareness. So this revelation is a revelation. Some revelations are simply you being pushed into a different room, or you being pushed out of one. A revelation is you believing that you were a failure, for example, your whole life. You believing you're shy. There's no such thing as shyness. There's only the condition in which your attention creates a solidified you that cannot speak comfortably. Permit yourself comfort and also ability. I mean, gosh, we don't want to have a world filled with people who feel they're incapable but actually feel more capable. So you need to be someone who you're not just efficient around yourself. When you're around others, others begin moving more capably. In other words, the man who succeeded was one who saw success everywhere, was success, carried it within him. What that means is, you know, regardless of anything, you deserve this. And that is actually the beauty of talking about a human life. Because a lot of people don't do it in the sense that they feel they will be judged. But when I talk about human life, I'm actually not talking about any of its humanly receiving aspects. You see, maturity is simply the hammer getting to know our thumb at times. And sometimes it is in a sense realizing that the hammer doesn't need to hurt the thumbs because they're already friends. And once you have a skill that doesn't belong to any place but is only present through the funnel of existential being, which is your moment of experience, then you are the God of your talent. You're the God in which talent comes from, because that is the amount you can receive to understand, to be self-aware, to then fade into your own understanding. So what is the human experience is a greater opening of knowing. Guys, what you can find to be of eternal value after one's body has perished in its own ways is to recognize that when we think about death, what is the only thing that hasn't been temporal? What hasn't been temporal in our experience? And this question will make even the gods curious. Because when man asks about who he is, any form of shape that man has perceived has come to greet him. Any form of belief and conduct in ways where you believe that there's something to believe is one of a confusing variation. So what that means is, from my experience, you do not just jump into an understanding that is not yours. If you were not brought up in a scientific background, it is okay to jump into science, but you will realize that your greatest learning occurs at your own pace. So let me tell you this situation. Let me tell you, you pick up a book in which you feel it helps you understand a bit more, and you have that book in your hand. Now you know reading this book is going to help you understand some things much better, get some new ideas on some new things. But before reading that book, if I come and ask you a lot of questions on that topic, you wouldn't know what I'm saying. So we see a lot of people are caught in not being able to properly communicate their experiences, and it's not their fault. It's the person asking the question who is chaining themselves to the other. Man's experience and the human being's experience is infinitely able when you pay attention to the sensitivity of life experience. But it's very soon and temporal, and you're not having fun if you're not sensitive to your experience. So what that means is, before you feel like a slave, who is the voice of the slave? Where is the voice? Where did the voice of the slave go? Where did the voice of the entrapped person go? Wait a minute, the slave believes he never had a voice. What? So the person enslaving you feels they have a voice, but you don't? So that's the thing, because sometimes we are so convinced of our ideas that we cannot see ourselves walk differently on a path that can be walked in infinite ways. And so you don't need to follow a rabbit to bring excitement in your life. You need to enhance your understanding by recognizing that you are the loudest voice of your experience. That your thoughts are immediately coming into your awareness before someone has the chance to even tell you something. So that immediate state of reception is faster to be honest, guys, my ways of learning things have enhanced greatly based on my own methodology of approach. And at the most, how would I say it? Most of the time, this is a very abstract concept, because I want you to be aware of when I tell you to explain something and you go into that moment of explaining it based on what you feel you know, it doesn't matter what evidence you give, it's the alignment of the evidence that is making our truths get tangled up. You are seeking linear alignment for all truth, but you are a non-linear being, because who was there before linearity was created? Man's ability to be self-aware has been done through many bodies. In other words, you think man has gone through only a physical evolution. Man's mental evolution is one that does not belong just to man. It is of a collective intelligence in which the individuality always has basked in. But the individuality is given so much ability to perceive its collectivity by choice, and if its choices are not looked at carefully, then you're choosing to see a future that is distracted by, other men's beliefs. So what that means is, I read a quote, and this quote stuck with me, and perhaps it stuck with me to be presented here right now. And it was this writing quote, and the quote said something like, that if you can't find the best book for you, go write your own. What that means is that at some point, once you become aware of your greater sense of presence, guys, and this has nothing to do with your ideas, it's just as a way of being. So if someone's asking me higher consciousness, I can't explain anything to you aside from my own experience, but if you want to go experience it, your awareness needs to be aware of itself. That means it doesn't matter if you're surfing, if you're meditating, if you're speaking, if you're talking, if you're punching someone in the face. Hopefully you're not doing that. You can still have awareness to awareness. And awareness to awareness is actually just an instant of your own release of having to think about anything, because you're not thinking about anything. So pretty much, I'm going to give you a minute of silence, and that is awareness to awareness. Don't define it by any physical relationship, any thought you have. Just that space, that moment is awareness to awareness. It is so instantaneous that you cannot put a meaning to. We are such instantaneous chain. Our presence at its most collective understanding, like in greater collective, how would I explain this actually? In a more collectively conscious sense, you understand that the inspiration that is within your eyes is also among everything else that has inspired you so far. And so your own story becomes your own greater prophecy of you being excited to see the different sense of change which you will be entering after. So what that means is excitement is following the most infinite and exotic change. At some point, even though we do live orderly lives, we want bursts of chaos because we want to feel our limbs move in different ways. So what that means is, if you tell me my whole life I'm just the guy who sat on a chair, and you just tell me your only state of being is sitting on a chair. You don't have standing up, you don't have anything else, You can only sit on this chair. Well, guess what? If I'm born sitting on a chair and I never walk, well, guess what? I don't know how to use my feet. I don't even know what feet is. So your ability to take yourself into intense experiences suggests the amount of learning and knowledge that will come to you. So take this in this sense, guys, that your ability to go through experience is a greater opportunity for your consciousness to become self-aware. So that element within you, which is always connecting the dots, but is not the dot or the line, is the awareness to everything which is omnisciently present through every act. What that means is, you first need a story. Some people don't. I never needed a story, and which was very odd actually. To not want a story in this culture, to trust a formless sense of knowing in this culture means one where for let's say a person of the age, in their 20s, in their early 20s, you see that it is slightly taking away from life. So you cannot give something without being aware of the change in space. You cannot change something without being aware of the change in space. What that means is, if me and you are in a room and you suddenly break a vase, it's fine. I mean, nothing's gonna physically happen to you. No one's gonna kill you, but you've changed the space. So the next time you're gonna walk in here, you're gonna have that person staring at you feeling of why did you break that vase when there's no vase? So in a sense, the human ability is how able one is to really omnisciently experience their ideas. So it's not that you shouldn't think about ideas. It's not that you shouldn't have ideas. It's not that you shouldn't use ideas. Guys, we're in this culture which is using ideas. So just like how you're using your hands to, let's say, eat food, we also engage with ideas and language and communication. So you need to realize the ability to understanding language means the ability to understand your meanings. So I was born, my roots are Persian, but I was raised in Canada, so I have different approaches. I have my own unique style. In a sense, we may think about culture, but because everyone has their own unique interests, cultures blend based on the inspiration of man to develop. So in 100 years, we're going to live in such an integrated world that we're going to have an understanding of different abilities. Man is not sensitive to his experience. That is why we only care for words in a resume. I mean, you want able people to work in able environments to have able goals and results. And when I say results, you may think there's a cause in the past to have a result in the future, but no. You, as a greater awareness to your awareness, are the result already. That's the difference. Because a formless presence has an ambition that becomes existential, and so you become an avatar because you're receiving the divine attention that is the flow of path to you. You know how someone comes and tells you something, for example? That person can also come and give you knowing. So guys, we're not that evolved yet, but it is possible. It has been possible. It's written in ancient times, in ancient wisdom, that consciousness is not limited to the body, but it is to any relationship that can be considered to a body. So what that means is I'm not sensitive enough to it, but if I become more sensitive to my experience, I will see that I can adjust my experience to how you're tuning in. And this has happened to me because once you allow yourself to navigate through clouds, nobody might want it to fly. It might have seemed insane to some. But what gave vision for example, the Wright brothers to build the Wright plane? It was a longing to express that which one knows. So there are many creative people in the world now. And by many, I mean 8 billion, or every single person who's alive. And you might not understand your creativity, but everyone is creative in some way. What that means is you are handling problems every day in some manner. Now, the difference is how playfully and, consciously can you engage in making your system efficient. Guys, if you invest in making one thing in your life efficient every day, guess what? You're going to have a good life in a little bit. Trust me, it begins small. You need to collect drops because your appreciation of the drops cannot be done fast. So if you believe you're a drop, well, guess what? You're gonna, even if you fall in the ocean, you're gonna still feel like a drop. Unless you see the existential connection you have. And what that means is, can you appreciate the ocean if you were a drop? And we're going to ask this question because what is a drop once it has fallen into the ocean? And what is an ocean once the drop has fallen into it? And we see that man and God, man and knowing, man and everything else that ever was, was relevant to man. And so, it is not often we find people communicating technologies that are for consciousness and not for man. You see, for example, psychedelics are a technology for consciousness, but the problem is, because man is trying to understand it, it is very hard for man to get experiences that are irrelevant to man, because how would they be consciously registered? And this is where you will understand the memory of your greater remembrance is not spatially oriented. What that means, guys, is that your consciousness and how you access different states of knowing and being is not linearly organized. The only way it is linearly organized is if all the linear possibilities were amped up to their most infinite potential, where cause and effect were an instantaneous moment of recognition. And where the cause, think about it. If you had an instantaneous reward system, you would never move from your place, because your experience would always be in its own infinite cycle. You see, we believe the planet and our experience of reality to be one where, because we can't see a God, we're ignoring the greater presence of intelligence. But at the same time, we're also allowing it to show itself in different ways. So if science has guided us into not taking literally transcripts that were written to be visualized literally, we find ignorance in that which thinks it is the center of the universe, when the only center that it can know is one which does not belong to a temporal one. So when man thinks about orientation, alignment, and reception of experience outside of linear and nonlinear thought, we have an appreciation of our own experience in ways which are skillfully present in different states of consciousness. So you must realize, you as a human being having access to imagination is actually giving you a great technology. Listen, I wanted to invest in our technologies in the future. And I don't know how much I'm going to get involved in that world, but I can understand that there's some inner technologies which comes from man's greater understanding, which man does not forget. We need teachers now to wake up and shout lessons which do not belong to them or anyone else. To find an existential teacher means you have found someone who can use any word, any sound, any moment to show you the moment of experience that you are. And such light is found to shine in ways in which the unknown are even delighted by and enlightened by. Much blessings and namaste.